See, Joe is not a complicated man at all. He's quite simple, in fact. He assembles his romance. He doesn't want to. He genuinely does not have the capacity to, because he himself cannot look inside himself. He doesn't have the category, because men do not separate sex from intimacy. They think sex is intimacy. So a lot of the women around Joe were doing a lot of the emotional heavy lifting, as you can see, and that is why Joe stayed the same throughout the series. Joe never does this. He does not see them as people with an internal world. He genuinely sees somewhere along the line, like a lot of black women, unfortunately, she decided that being chosen, even if it's embarrassing, is better than not being chosen at all. If you spend some time on the black women's corners of the internet, then you've probably heard a variation of these words coming from black women.
Sometimes I want everything but sex. Like, I like the kiss, and I like when we're locking lips and then we kind of are breathing in sync, and like, ooh, I love skin to skin cuddling. I like laying together, watching movies, and laughing. Like, I love laughing together. Like, I feel like everything but sex is so beautiful. Sex is beautiful too, but everything but that. I just love going into somebody's lore, learning about them as a person, learning about their childhood, then learning about my childhood, connecting on a different level, on a spiritual level.
And at the gist of what that woman was saying is that she wants to be known, she wants to be seen, she wants intimacy. And unfortunately, a lot of black women have never experienced real intimacy, and a lot of black men don't know what intimacy is. They think they have an idea of it, but they really don't. And I'm talking about black men and black women specifically on today's video, not because this is exclusive to them, but because firstly, I'm doing an analysis on the Polygamist, and I'm a black person. So I'm talking about my community, basically. So let's get into it. Welcome to Front Row Seats. I'm Essie, a social work UCT student, and I'm getting over my fear of being seen by talking about the things that I'm passionate about, whether that be socially, politically, or anything in between. And you get to have a front row seat to my one-man show. So let's get into the video. So today I want to start with emotional attunement, because emotional attunement is the foundation that intimacy is built on. So emotional attunement is when someone can instantly tell when something is emotionally wrong with you. It's being able to walk into a room and someone can instantly tell that something's off, and they are curious about it rather than commenting about it. You know, there's a distinction there. And normally in black households, it doesn't go like this. And it's not because black parents don't love their kids. It's because they also grew up this way. So they don't know that it's missing. And so it shows up in comments. So comments like, oh, she started with the moods again. Oh, he's locked himself in his room again. Oh, they never want to spend time with the family. You know, things like that. And as you can hear, that sounds more like an accusation rather than curiosity. So what happens with children that grow up in households like this is that they learn that their feelings, their emotions are an inconvenience and a problem. So they learn to read the room, and they learn that, okay, if I'm in front of my family, I have to hold it together and I can fall apart in private, all alone. And they carry this well into adulthood. So this happens for both girls and boys. It just manifests differently. So with the boys, they try to verbalize it by saying things like, oh, being a man is so hard. So they start seeing emotional suppression as strength. And it's not really strength, because this is exactly what makes them weak men. And with girls, it normally shows up as silence. So they are taught to put their feelings on the back burner and accommodate everyone else's feelings. So a lot of girls, a lot of women are the emotional pillars in their households. And mothers affirm this behavior by saying things like, oh, you're so understanding, you're so mature, by making their kids put their emotions and feelings on the back burner. Both girls and boys experience this. It just manifests differently. And this difference is very important for what happens when the black girl and the black boy come together and they try to love each other. I mean, just think of the black models of love that we grew up watching. I'm not talking about TV, I'm talking about in our own households now. I know in a lot of two-parent black households, it is quite rare to see real examples of intimacy between the parents. It's quite rare to see examples of what genuinely liking each other, choosing each other, being close to each other is. I'll even say it's an anomaly. Yeah, they may stay together, they might love each other, but a lot of the times what we grow up seeing in these households is cheating, financial stress, financial abuse, all of these things. And this model of love, it gets ingrained into your head, even if you know it's wrong, but it gets ingrained in your head and it manifests in certain behaviors. For example, I remember when I was in grade 8, I was 14, and there was a girl crying in class, and the white girls were quite empathetic towards her, but the black girls immediately went into asking questions like, why would you trust a boy? Why would you allow yourself to love him? At 14, we had already decided that loving someone was this embarrassing thing that you cannot come back from. So we had decided to shame the action of loving someone before it shamed us. At 14, that is pattern recognition at its finest. And unfortunately, we carry these behaviors into our adulthood. As we can see now, a lot of young black women are afraid of being seen or posting with their partners because they are anticipating being embarrassed, because this is what they grew up seeing in their households. This is what they're seeing among their peers too, that black men will embarrass black women. Now, I say black men are taught sex before they are taught intimacy, not because there's a skills gap there, but because they never had the foundation of attunement, of emotional attunement. They are starved of being seen. So they reach for what's closest to them, which is sex. They reach for something that they have been told that they should desire. Because what I've learned through my own field work, through what you'd refer to as individual therapy casework, is that a lot of black boys' internal or emotional worlds are never engaged with. They really aren't. So they themselves don't know how to engage with their internal world. So they know that there's an emotional, no, they know that there's a gap there. They just don't know that it's emotional, right? So they reach for something that's closest to them, or something that they've been taught that they are allowed to want, which is sex. So a lot of the time, lust isn't just lust with them. It becomes a way to feel an emotional desire that has been turned into a sexual or a physical desire. And what's sad about this lust problem that a lot of black men have is that it doesn't even have to do with the sex or the physicality of it. It's literally about filling an emotional gap, an emotional hunger that has been there since they were like 7 years old, and they don't even have the words to verbalize it. And we know this because we see with Joe. We know Joe's dad was an alcoholic. Not much was mentioned about his mom, and we know that he was bullied. We see this on the scene where they show us how him and Essie met, right? And immediately we see that he rerouted this emotional need into a physical one, because he started two-timing women in high school, and this happens so seamlessly and so quietly with most black men. See, Joe is not a complicated man at all. He's quite simple, in fact. He assembles his romantic and interpersonal relationships the same way he assembles his businesses, and that is through control, performance, and acquisition. He does not see his women as people with an internal world, because he himself does not have the emotional depth to look inside. That's why he does not feel bad for the atrocities that he does to those women. See, Joe conflates desire with love. He genuinely thinks because he desires something, then he must love it. Desire is about what the thing that you want does for you, and love is about you learning more about what you love. So you want to learn about the women's internal world, their emotions, the experiences, their fears, how they feel being with you. Joe never does this. He does not see them as people with an internal world. He genuinely sees his women as desires. That's why he couldn't even ask Matipa how she was doing after she gave birth. He didn't care about that. He couldn't even ask her about her emotional well-being, how she's been doing postpartum. Instead, he just wanted sex. That's why he said that disgusting comments about her mouth working, because he does not see Matipa as a fully functioning person with an internal world. And that's why a lot of the women in his life were so emotionally starved, including his children, especially Sarah. He genuinely thinks, like a lot of men, that provision and presence are enough. That's why he never asked how Sarah has been doing, how she feels now. Instead, he was like, okay, I'm going to buy you an iPhone, I'm going to buy you a car. That should be enough. And it's not because he doesn't want to. He genuinely does not have the capacity to, because he himself cannot look inside himself. He doesn't have the category for that. So when you, Balesa, go to your boyfriend and you say, oh, I don't feel seen, I don't feel like you know me very well, you're boggling his mind. You literally are boggling. He doesn't understand what you're talking about, because in his head he's thinking, I bought you the purse you said you wanted, I took you to the restaurant, we had sex, what more could you want? Because men do not separate sex from intimacy. They think sex is intimacy. Because, I mean, just think about what sex offers. Sex offers closeness, someone's full attention on you, connection. So they don't separate those things. So when you say, I want you to learn my internal world, I want you to care about, he doesn't have the category for that. He doesn't even do that with himself. And that's exactly what happens with Joe. So earlier I talked about how Black women learn to put their feelings and emotions on the back burner and become emotionally attuned to everyone else's emotions but theirs. And Joyce does this very perfectly. So instead of leaving Joe, what Joyce does is she shrinks herself into becoming the perfect wife for Joe. She shrinks her emotions, shrinks her feelings, to the point where she shrinks her dignity and is the one that suggests polygamy. Somewhere along the line, like a lot of Black women, unfortunately, she decided that being chosen, even if it's embarrassing, is better than not being chosen at all. Yeah. So a lot of the women around Joe were doing a lot of the emotional heavy lifting, as you can see. And that is why Joe stayed the same throughout the series. They were doing a lot of the emotional heavy lifting, even though they were getting emotionally scarred in the process. And that is exactly what we see in society today with Black men and Black women. They do all the emotional heavy lifting without even taking care of themselves. Unfortunately, this gap also shows up in sex. A lot of women have been conditioned into sexual preferences that they never even chose. Things like rough sex, being choked, etc. If you like that, I'm not shaming your preference, cool. But I know that a lot of women like gentleness, they like softness, they like their bodies being learned. And men that are not emotionally in tune with themselves and are not attuned to other people's emotions learn sex from porn. And porn teaches men that sex is something to be done to women, right? So all these kinky things like being choked, rough sex, are just a way for them to satiate their intrinsic desire to dominate women. And we see this with Joe and Lindani. Already between them, there was a power imbalance because obviously he's way older and he already had this dominion over her. And so he didn't even give Lindani a chance to choose whether she wants to use those kinky toys or whatever or not. He just did because he just wanted to feel a sense of dominion over her. And there's a lot of other ways that this shows, but I could go on for the entire day and I don't have that time. But yeah, let's land this. So we have an emotionally starved man and emotionally starved woman. It manifests differently. They come together. The man offers provision and sex. He thinks he's done. He thinks that's intimacy. The woman hasn't been seen because she's learned to put her feelings and emotions on the back burner. This guy comes and desires her and she feels seen. And that's how people end up in relationships and marriages without actually knowing each other. And again, that's what we see with Joe and his wives. He doesn't actually know them, doesn't actually see them as people with an internal world. So yeah, that's my take today. I would love hearing what your opinions are on everything that I said in the comment sections. I would love to engage in conversations with you, and if this made you think, please send it to your friends, have a conversation about it. Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video because there's more coming.